In the last three parts of project management, we've looked at the concept of the project, we've looked at how the project manager and the project team should be formed, we've looked at the concept of a project definition workshop, and also the importance and how to manage risk with some hints and tips on how you might want to do it. In the last part of this on project management, we're going to look further at some of the risks and also how you might deal with these things. So following on from the example we gave about how you would actually establish a sales office across Europe, here are some of the risks and issues that you may discover. I'm not going to go through all these, but I'll let you read these in your own time and consider if you've thought of other risks that might cause problems in this area. Here's an example of a real risk register, and it's actually part of the risk register that was put together by the contractors when they established the district heating scheme that was built in the university about 3-4 years ago. And you can see the concept of risk, the impact of the risk, the probability of the risk, and also the ideas of the mitigation and who owned the mitigation plan. And those are the sort of things that you should do. Quite a simple model, but it's very effective, and this is a real-life example of a risk register. No matter how well you try to predict the project, it will always change when you come to do the execution of the project. And an important part of project management is controlling change. When you've got a team of 20 people all working on separate individual parts, you need to make sure that any change that may impact someone else is clearly communicated to that person so that you don't land up with a classic problem of square peg, round hole, and the two don't meet when you try to integrate the project at the end. The first thing to look at is scope management. And as we discussed, scope is everything that you can contractually agreed with the client before they will define it as complete. We don't want any projects that you lob over the wall and assume that someone else will look after. As a project manager, as a project team, it's imperative that you make sure that what you deliver is exactly what the customer wanted and you meet and agree what the acceptance criteria are with the customer. Agree what completion means and also how it will be delivered. If you're producing a piece of electronics, what is the performance, what is the specification for that piece of electronics before the customer will be happy. How much you do within a project, or the scope, will define how much effort you require to put into the project. And that in turn will drive the cost. So you need to be very clear how much effort you're applying to each different part of the project. We don't want primary school football teams here, where the whole team run after the ball. We want professional engineering, that each individual on the team knows exactly what the responsibilities are and what they need to do to support other members of the team. We also don't want any prima donnas. We want to make sure that everyone works as a team and they can deliver and contribute to the project equally. The project manager may be responsible for the cost of delivering the project, but the team also has a large impact into how successful a project can be. If a team does not work together, the project will be a failure. So let's look at some of the costs and how you control some of the costs and things within project. First of all, the time and materials. Well, you're not really billing the client for projects, but you need to record how much time and resource you're applying to each part of the project. If you've got a piece of software to write and you've estimated it will take 3 weeks, when the project manager comes along and at the end of 2.5 weeks and says, "Are you finished?" you'll probably say, "Nearly." Over 40 years in industry, I've learned to interpret an engineer saying nearly means they're about 60% through. So it suggests that the project will take longer. There's different types of contract, and I won't go into the detail of time and materials versus fixed price. Time and materials is pretty old-fashioned and is virtually never used. Fixed price is much more common, and it's what most people would work to in modern industry. You define upfront how much the project will cost, what you deliver for that money, and the project will get paid according to either quarterly or in the years. Either way, you need to make sure that you've estimated your tasks very carefully. And it's imperative that the people doing the work estimated the task. I would love to say that the concept of project manager can define the time, but the project manager can only ask for the estimates from the team members. As a project manager, you'll be monitoring costs and resources against your plan, against your Gantt chart. You will monitor each of the activities and mark them down as percentage complete. Ideally, halfway through the period, the estimated period, the activity will be half complete. 3/4, it will be 75% complete. But you also need to look out for things that should be half complete, but they're less than half. You may need to apply either more resource to that task or may need to constrain or modify the scope. I would suggest that within the project, you use a traffic light chart. Green, no problems and on schedule. Amber, no technical problems, but we're getting a bit tight on time. And red is there is either a technical problem I cannot overcome, or there is a time constraint that I cannot meet, i.e. I'm going to deliver late. It's imperative that you're honest with the project manager. The project manager cannot estimate your work for you. You need to estimate that for yourself and tell the project manager honestly whether you're late or not, because they need to advise other parts of the project who may be waiting for that deliverable. Let's talk about issue management briefly. Here's a couple of examples. You've got a monthly cost report and you report an underspend of 10k. You're 50% complete and behind schedule on a major activity. You estimate the work can be completed by working a team over the next 2 weeks at premium cost. What would you do? What would you do with the 10k? But if the project is perhaps 50k, then 10k could have a substantial impact onto the achievements of the project, and you may indeed be able to recover your project schedule. In the second one, a customer is due for demonstration of new software, but the day before the demo, the vehicle starts transmitting incorrect data and it's not working. What would you do? Would you try and just risk demonstrating the parts of the software that did work to the customer? Or would you call the customer up and say you need to reschedule? Or would you go along to the customer, cross your fingers and hope? In both cases, what would the project team want to do in these instances? And you should think these things and consider them in your project. I said earlier that there's 4 parts, and project closure is probably the least attractive part of doing any project. Project closure is making sure that everything that you've delivered to the client has been documented and properly documented. It could be a data sheet, it could be an operations manual, it could even be make sure that all the invoices are paid. The client must sign off on all the completion criteria. If you said a piece of electronics has to achieve a certain performance, if that has been achieved, then the client has got to sign off and say, yes, it works and it meets the specification. Be wary, clients may try to change their mind. This is why it's important to write it down at the start of the project so that it's very clear what you're delivering. It's also very useful to do a lessons learned or a wrap-up in a formal workshop. Things will go wrong on the project, people will have failed to deliver for good and bad reasons, and it's important that you gather that information and record that. And it also makes very good reading for a new report. You have identified that some parts of the civil engineering requirement that failed because someone did not carry out a task. It's better not to make the issues too personal, but it's very important to do a lessons learned after project. And in working in the commercial environment, you would gather that knowledge together and formally register it and publish papers on why and what went wrong and went well within your project, because there'll be many aspects that went well with no incident, and it's important to record what you did well as what you did badly. For your own projects, I would encourage you to do your project definition workshop up front and early. Get your team together on Zoom and try to work out the scope. Focus on the scope at the starting point and then worry about tying costs and risks, because you need to be clear on what you're delivering and make sure everyone in the project team understands what the aspects of the scope are. I suggest you follow the method identified in the definition workshop of regularly reviewing the risk register. Set up a schedule for team meetings, how often are you going to meet, and where are you going to meet, and report your findings out. The project manager should write a short report after every review meeting detailing the actions that's been required, who is going to carry out the action, and when the action is going to be completed. And this will allow you to monitor the speed of how your project is progressing. So as a summary to project management, it's not easy. Project management is a very difficult skill that you can only master through practice and experience, and unfortunately making many, many mistakes. Planning and upfront planning an agreement with the sponsor is crucial, and keep the sponsor involved with the progress of your project. Even if things go wrong, let the project sponsor know so they understand that things are changing. Risk management is critical, and I would suggest each major part of the project has its own little risk register within that. And only the major project risks get rolled up to the project risk register. Change and issue management, I would use the traffic light system. It's simple, it's easy, and everyone understands that red is bad and green is go. And finally, remember your project closure meeting. It gives you good information and good text for your final report that you will submit as part of the course. So I would encourage you to do a lot of work on your project closure and identify the good things as well as the things you can improve. Just like to acknowledge a couple of people here. First is Ross Wilson, who used to be a professor of integrated engineering, and also Paul Kinney, who works for IBM and is a certified project manager. Both of these provided information for this course. Thank you very much. I hope that's been helpful for your project management, and I look forward to speaking to you again about project finances and also project marketing. Thank you.